Unit 5, the inheritance. What benefits come to those in the church? So we're kind of making a case of really key ideas about the church. We're looking at the essentials, and now we're on this fourth one. We've looked at the criteria, community, the new reality, and now we're looking at this idea of the inheritance, covenant blessings for all. So what is meant by this idea? Well, it's this idea that in Christ, the benefits of God's covenants with the Jews have now been extended to the Gentiles. So God had given the Jews these promises, and now in Christ, the benefits of those promises are now made available to anyone who would place themselves in Christ through faith and through trust. And so we see this idea that it's no longer just a national thing, that the covenant blessings are now available to anyone in Christ. And so now Ephesians 3:6, it talks about this concept where it talks about the Gentiles should be fellow heirs of the same body and partakers of his promise in Christ through the gospel. So Christ has now redefined this idea of a covenant blessing, that anyone can receive it, Jew or Gentile, through faith. And so it's this awesome idea that the blessings that were exclusive are now utterly available to all who are in Christ. In Romans 11, we see the same idea. We're here, now Paul is specifically focusing on the Gentiles and their relationship and how they, their attitude towards these blessings. And he says, if some of the branches, which he means to be Jews, were broken off, meaning they chose not to believe in Christ, and you, Gentiles, being a wild olive tree, again, he uses this idea of trees and branches to communicate this concept. He says, if you, who are not part of the original group, you are a wild olive tree, were grafted in among them, do not boast against the branches or the Jews. If you do boast, remember that you do not support the root, which are the covenants, but the root supports you. So here he's almost talking that there's the Jews who have rejected Jesus as the Messiah, and the Gentiles who have accepted and who have placed their trust in there. He's saying, don't become arrogant as though you are now above the Jews. No. The covenants were there for all, and you are now invited into something that was originally theirs. And just because they have rejected it does not put you in any way better than them. And so it's this idea here where the covenant blessings are for those who are in Christ, regardless of your background, which we talked about during the community unit. So we see also in Ephesians 1:11, same idea. In him we have obtained an inheritance, being predestined according to the purpose of him who works all things according to the counsel of his will, that you may know what is the hope of his calling, what are the riches of the glory of his inheritance in the saints. So this idea that the covenant blessings are now ours, Paul is really trying to get across to the Ephesian church, the idea that now they are theirs, regardless of their background. And I love how simply he puts it in Galatians 3:29. If you are Christ's, then you are Abraham's seed and heirs according to the promise. We are inheritance not by anything else other than through faith in the work of Christ, the finished work of Christ. So this inheritance is the idea that the benefits of God's covenants with the Jews have now been extended to the Gentiles in Christ. So we're continuing to build on this idea of what it means to be part of the church. And we're gonna go further in our next unit and look at this idea of the result. So in Unit 6, let's look at the result. What kind of people do we now become?